Welcome to Pursuing Quality Long-Term Care, an educational podcast for individuals needing long-term care and their families. Join us as we talk with national experts and advocates about strategies you can use in the pursuit of quality long-term care. This podcast is a program of the National Consumer Voice for Quality Long-Term Care. Consumer Voice is a nonprofit organization and depends on our members and donors for support. To contribute to this podcast and our work, make a donation at theconsumervoice.org/donate. Every dollar helps. When something goes wrong in long-term care, do you know what to do? In this episode, we introduce Documenting Resident Concerns in Long-Term Care, a new resource created to help residents and families respond with confidence. From falls and pressure injuries to conflicts with staff, knowing what questions to ask and what details to document can be the key to real solutions. Lori Smetanka and Jocelyn Bogdan of Consumer Voice share practical strategies for gathering information and advocating effectively. This joint project from the National Consumer Voice for Quality Long-Term Care and the National Center on Elder Abuse offers a clear path to stronger advocacy and better care.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jocelyn Bogdan from the Consumer Voice, and today we're joined by Lori Smetanka, Consumer Voice Executive Director. We wanted to have a conversation about something that's really important: what to do, and specifically what information you'll want and how to document that information when something goes wrong in a nursing home. Whether we're talking about a fall or a bed sore or a concerning interaction or something else, knowing what questions to ask and what information to gather can make a huge difference when you're documenting and reporting what occurred. We know it can be really hard to organize your thoughts and consider next steps when something unexpected does occur. And so, along with this podcast, Consumer Voice and the National Council on Elder Abuse are releasing a new resource designed to help people gather the right information after incidents occurred. The resource includes questions to think about, prompts that will help you gather important information, as well as an actual form that you can use that you can fill in and give to a grievance official, an ombudsman, your state survey agency, or anyone else. We're really excited both about the resource and this conversation because we know how overwhelming this can be for families and residents. We never expect and we don't want to anticipate things going wrong, but being prepared and knowing what to do can really make a difference. And so, Lori, can we talk a little bit more deeply about sort of how and why we created this resource and also what it includes and what people should be doing and thinking about in these circumstances? And I guess we can start with why this is important. Why is it important to have a structured way to respond when something, for instance, maybe a fall, occurs in a nursing home?
hmm Yeah, sure. And good morning, Jocelyn. Good to see you.
Morning.
It's important to really catalog what happened after there's an incident so that you are clear and can be working closely with either the facility or the staff or whomever is helping you with an investigation to really determine what the best next steps are to provide support for the resident who may be either harmed by whatever the event is that happened, but also to help prevent future incidents or events from happening again. So by really gathering the full range of information regarding what happened, and could help get to why it happened and help find
Yeah.
solutions, that would help prevent it from happening again for other people.
Yeah, and also, like in thinking about it from if you were a family member or if you were a resident, and something happened to you, I think having information documented in a way that is organized and that makes sense can really add to your confidence when you are reporting an event. I think a lot of times when something occurs, people aren't really sure what to do or what to do next or what information is important in what occurred. And so I think part of this is really making sure that you've documented what matters so that no one necessarily comes back to you and says, well, wait a minute, we don't know this, that, or whatever. You can
Mhm.
feel prepared, when talking about what happened, and you have the information at your disposal that you need to really, form not an argument, but just, to be able to make the case that something went wrong. um,
Right. Yeah. Excuse me, absolutely. And I think also to get to I mean, it's not your job to get to the root cause of what happened, but it helps
right.
you get to the root cause of what happened, um, so that you know how to respond and know what to ask for in terms of solutions to whatever the problem is, that led to whatever the incident could be. So, I mean, we're talking vaguely about that because there are a lot of things that potentially
Yeah.
could happen, but it's important to get the best possible quality care, to really know, what's going on and what happened and try to figure out, how to address that in the future.
Yeah, no, and I think that's right. And I think something, and we can talk in a minute of sort of about what these questions are, what you should be asking and doing. But I think you're right. I think that sort of going through and figuring out, even in your own mind, what exactly did happen. What was the situation? Who was around when this happened? Did something really, was it something that went wrong in the facility as we're describing it, or was it just something that happened? I mean, there's a lot to sort of work through. If you see that your family member is injured or something has happened to them, I mean, it can just really help I know I used the term before, but organize your own thoughts and
Right.
determine what situation you are facing. And so let's talk a little bit about what questions we should be asking and what we do want to be documenting when, and again, you said vague and now that's all I can think, but when an incident occurs or when
Yeah.
something happens that's out of the ordinary or unexpected.
hmm Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think you really want to start with cataloging what happened. What exactly was the incident that occurred? Was there a fall? Was there an altercation, with someone else? Or what is it that you're concerned about? And write it down. And
Yeah,
then lay out, in terms of looking at questions, you want to lay out almost like the who, what, when, and where type
right.
of issues. So where did it happen? Were you in your room? Were you in the dining room? Were you in the hallway? Um, and then when did it happen? So put actually the specific date and time that the incident occurred.
Yeah,
And when you think about, what were you doing when you noticed when it happened? So, I mean, and so when we ask these questions, this could be from the resident's perspective, if you can capture, what exactly happened and be writing it down, or even if you're a family member and have come in and
right.
noticed that there was something that happened. So, it may be you may be coming at it from a different perspective. So if you're a family member, for example, looking at like, when did you notice that there was an issue, or when did
Yeah,
you notice that something, had occurred? Or if you're from the resident's perspective, actually, when did the incident, occur?
right.
Right. And then start looking at like who was involved, who was around, who was involved in the incident. Were there staff there? Was it another resident? So, if you had, if there were witnesses, to the incident, that were either in a room with you or, in the hallway, like who observed whatever
Right.
the incident was that happened. Just write down all of the facts. You're thinking about like all of
Yeah.
the facts that occurred.
And again, that's going to be very different based on what this is. If it's a bed sore that you as a family member discover, as you noted, not exactly when it occurs, but when you realize it's occurred, you might not be able to necessarily write down, well, who was there when it happened, but
Right.
you can say, who reported it to you, who let you know this happened, something like that. So everything is going to be different. That's going to be very different than if there is some kind of, altercation or incident with another resident that you're reporting on or something else. I mean, I think what's good about, the way that you sort of went through the who, what, where, when, um, is that, they're adaptable. So, part of the resource that we created is a form that you can fill in. And if there's a question you feel like you can't answer, that's okay. I mean, I don't want people to feel that, well, maybe this doesn't pertain to me because I can't tell you who was there when it happened. I mean, these are somewhat general questions, but I think they really do, as you said, get to the heart of the incident.
hmm
And so in addition to the who, what, where, the next thing I think, we talk about or encourage people to really talk about is the response. This is really important. And you might not realize, I mean, it's somewhat obvious that, okay, what happened? When did it happen? Makes sense. But, also thinking about how did you, whether you were the resident or you were the family member, react when it happened? Like did you ask for help immediately? Did someone come and help you? Did it take a really long time for someone to come and help when it happened? And again, whether you're a resident who is immediately in a situation or you're a family member who came in and realized something has happened, what was the response like? How did the staff respond? And that gets more into, I think, a little bit of a discussion of, you know, did not that any of it is your responsibility, but did you ask, what steps did you take, really? Did you
Mhm.
ask how to prevent it from happening again? Are you concerned that it could happen again? And then
Mhm.
also just what is the injury or harm that occurred?
Mhm.
And what is the impact on you, for lack of another way to describe it? Did you need medical treatment if you're the resident? If you're a family member, did your loved one need physical therapy? Just sort of like what happened after the event occurred, rather than what happened when, because both things are really equally important.
Right. Well, and it's all part of capturing the full record, right?
Yeah.
So when you're looking at what the response was and how people responded to you, you're essentially building your record for exactly what happened. Which again, just certainly if you called and reached out for help and you weren't getting help because there were not enough staff available, for example, or
Right.
people were too busy, or even you were just told, I'm not going to help you right now. I mean, whatever the situation may be, it helps you build a record, which then helps you get to a solution for the problem that happened, that could help prevent it happening again, both for you and for other people in the future.
Yeah.
So, mhm.
I think that's really important. And I think it's important that, like as you just described, when you're answering a question like that, or when you're documenting sort of, whether you called for help or if someone assisted you, it doesn't have to just be, did anyone assist you? Yes or no. It, like you said, there was no staff there to assist me. That really matters. Information like that, in terms of, getting to the heart of why something happened, or whether it's a systemic issue in the facility, or whether it may happen again. um, when we look at the form we created, we have space for people to really fill in their answers, and so this isn't just a checklist or a yes or no. It really is a chance for you to capture sort of the situation and what's happening.
Mhm. Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. And I know we have, some other sections in the form, but, think of it in terms of, when you do share this information with an entity that does have the ability or responsibility to investigate a problem that may have happened, whether it's the grievance officer in the facility, for example, or the ombudsman or the surveyor, the more information you can provide them about what
Yeah.
happened and the response to what happened and the impact of what happened, the more likely you are to get a good investigation, and the more likely you are to get some sort of resolution that will benefit you and the other residents in your home.
Yeah, and I also think, to that end, as I said in the beginning, I think sometimes people don't even know whether or not they should report what happened. Whether or not, is this a big enough deal? Like, did something happen? Should I just expect this to happen if I'm living in? I mean, first of all, no, you should not expect negative events to happen. But I mean, I think a lot of times, you don't necessarily want to be a rabble rouser, or you're concerned. And I think something that thinking through these questions and documenting an event helps with, is helping you to really see that, yes, something, this shouldn't have happened, as you start thinking about, wait a minute, no, like my mother should not have fallen when she was going to the bathroom. There should have been staff or someone there helping her. You sort of come to that as you sort of create this written record. And it also, again, kind of gets to the heart of other problems that might be occurring. Is it the first time something like this has happened, or have there been other little things that sort of, lead you to this? It really, I think, helps you get a picture
Right.
of the situation in a way that you wouldn't have, if you just, shot off an email or wrote something quickly to a grievance official without actually thinking through, what really happened, like more holistically. that makes sense.
Right,
But
right. So I know one of the other sections that we have here talks about looking at the environment, the setting
mhm.
that you were in, the location. Where were you? We had mentioned this earlier. Where were you when the incident happened? But when you think about the environment around you, what do you think some of the things are that we should be looking at?
I mean, I think when you're thinking about the environment, the first thing is, did something in the environment contribute to what happened? Was there a problem within the environment? I think also, was it clean, which could be the same thing. And going back to whether or not someone fell, let's say it's your mom's living in a facility and her clothes are strewn all over the floor and she slips. I mean, I think all of those things matter, but whether or not the area was clean also gets to a lot of other issues. If your loved one has a bed sore and your concern is maybe they aren't being turned enough or people aren't paying attention to them, look around the environment, see what that looks like, because no one come in the room in a long time. So I think like those are important things to be aware of. And to that point, like, does the environment expose a larger systemic issue that might be
Mhm.
happening within the facility? And then back to, and I think we talked about staff a little bit earlier, but who was on duty when this happened? Who was responsible? And do you know how many staff were working in that part of the facility when this happened? And
Mhm.
and just to that note, you should know how many staff. Facilities should be reporting on the amount of staff that are available on each shift. That information should be available to everyone at all times. But if you're a resident and this happened to you, and you can say, no one had been in my room in X amount of time, or if you're a family member and when you come in and notice something, you don't see any staff around, there's nobody available. Those are all really important things to document. Again, to kind of help build that record.
Right. Absolutely. I think as again, as we look through all of these different types of facts that you should be kind of collecting and cataloging if there is an incident. We find, we talk to a lot of family members, we talk to a lot of residents who do have concerns, and we know that they've talked with others, in the facility, with ombudsman programs, with surveyors, and I think having the facts available, this full
Hmm.
range of facts available really does help promote better resolution for whatever the problem is that exists. Too often, particularly if, someone's really upset, or angry
Yeah.
or emotional, about a situation. I mean, certainly, you want to feel all those emotions and you have every right to do that, but find a moment and a time to really just catalog the facts of what happened. And that is what you really need to be presenting when you're presenting your concerns or your problems to whoever the entity is that you're looking for help from. Because you will get a better solution to whatever the issue is at that point.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point, because I do talk to a lot of family members who often reach out to us over one specific incident. And then once we start talking, I realize, oh my goodness, like they're actually dealing with a lot of different things. There is a lot going on, a lot going wrong in their facility. And, we'll talk about it, and I'll often encourage them to reach out to their ombudsman, but, or file a complaint with their state survey agency. But I think what's so great about having a resource like this available is it can help you focus on that one
Right.
incident that you first reached out to us about. And a lot of times I'll tell people, well, just write down the facts. But here we have something that sort of helps you lay them out. And it
Mhm.
also helps because I can imagine in the ways that I talk to family members, and I completely understand it, that, you call about one thing, but then, the whole list of things that happen sort of pours out of you. um, the importance of organization when you are reaching out, whether it's to the grievance official or to the state survey agency, is incredibly important, because they need to be focused on what the incident is that you're talking about. And I do think a lot of times it's easy to start writing an email or start having a conversation, and again, you just, all these other things come up. So I think what's so important here is the ability to really hone in on
Mhm.
this is what happened, this is when it happened, this is what the situation looked like when it happened, and this is, you're not really saying exactly why it happened, although you can say why you think it happened. But it really helps you focus in on, one incident. And certainly if you have multiple things that have occurred, you should do this for all of them, but staying organized and being able to stay focused on, what you are trying to resolve in that moment is really important. And I think this really helps with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as we, think about, once someone has filled out a form like this in terms of, what they do with it,
Yeah.
what do you do with this information? I mean, always keep a copy for yourself. So
Yeah.
let's start there. But there are different places that a person can go for help if there is an incident that occurs. And so, let's start with the facility. The facility must have a grievance procedure where you can file a
Hmm.
complaint about what happened. They have to have a designated person. Technically, that person's called a grievance officer, but there has to be a person available to receive complaints and to be responsible for ensuring that there's an investigation into what happened. And frankly, the information that you give them can help with that
Yeah.
investigation, no matter who's doing that investigation. And they have to respond to you. So, that is something you need to remember. If you're in with the nursing
Absolutely.
home, they have a responsibility to respond to you with laying out what is it they found in their investigation and what they're planning to do about whatever incident that occurred. So that definitely is one thing you need to remember, and this could be useful when you're talking with the facility and trying to resolve a grievance through that process. And what's another way, Jocelyn?
Um, the next thing I would think of is reaching out to your ombudsman to talk to them about what happened. And again, I think, I know many residents who work with their ombudsman regularly and have more of a casual relationship in some ways, but even still, when you're talking to your ombudsman, and many people don't have that relationship with them, having everything laid out this way helps the ombudsman as they try to figure out what happened. And they, I think it helps them enormously in terms of kind of capturing a lot of information they might then have to look for if you didn't give it to them. But it also, I mean, they might be able to compare it to other situations that they've experienced within your facility or look at things like that. So having this information organized for them and having, being able to go to them and just to kind of back up, you should always go to your ombudsman in these situations. When there's an incident or something that occurs, reach out to them, let them know this has happened, and again, even if you filled out a form, you still may feel, when you think about other steps to take, you might feel a little bit overwhelmed or uncomfortable, and they're there to help with those things, so they can help you sort of navigate some of these processes. In addition. So I would say, after really working with your facility with the grievance process, reach out to your ombudsman and let them know the situation, particularly if the grievance process doesn't help. If
Mhm.
you're sort of still left feeling that there is no resolution.
I would also say, when you're looking for solutions and going back to how you can work within the facility, um, working through the care planning process
Yeah,
is another place that this can
absolutely.
be a useful tool. Bringing it to the care plan and talking about what happened, and then planning for how to prevent the situation from happening again in the future is certainly a way that you can use this information and the documents. And also, when you're participating in resident council or family council meetings,
That was going to
as
be my
a,
next one.
yeah, so
Yeah.
as a trigger for, kind of what happened. So go ahead, why don't you talk about that?
Oh, no, no, no. I was just, it's funny as I was listening. Okay, what are all the things I would do? I was like, do I do ombudsman or do I do, the resident council next?
Yeah.
I think it's really important to bring things like this to your resident or family council. Um, and I think it's great. Not only that, but if you are a family member or a resident who has access to this resource, share it with your resident and family council so everyone has access to it. But a lot of times, I think people think that what is happening to them is only happening to them. They feel that they're in a facility, something bad happened, they don't necessarily think it's their fault, but they think it can feel very isolating. And your family council or resident council, if they're in your facilities, really exists to take that away and make you realize that you are part of a community where you are. And a lot of times, if something is happening to you, it is likely happening to other people in your facility. And even if it isn't, it's important for other people in the facility to be aware of what's happening. So whether you're a resident who is going to your council and saying, I had this thing happen to me, and this is what happened and how it happened. There might be somebody else who says, oh my God, last week I had this happen, and then all of a sudden you're advocating together. Your resident council also has the ability to, go to the grievance official and should, and, you have rights as part of that. And if you were a family member, the same is true of your family council. You might go and say, this happened to my loved one. Other people might say, the same thing happened to us. And all of a sudden you might be more aware of a systemic issue. So when you go to the ombudsman or you go to someone else, you can say, this is a bigger problem than I realized, or this isn't just me, and you're not sort of
Right.
dealing with things alone. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And certainly, you can use this information to file a complaint with the state regulatory agency,
Yeah,
which is the state survey agency. Um, every state has an entity that's responsible for licensing, for surveying, for overseeing the operations in a long-term care facility to make sure that they're meeting standards. And you can use this information to file a complaint with them if you think that that's necessary and appropriate to do. And they do annual surveys, they do complaint surveys when they receive complaints. And so it is something that, if you want to file a complaint with the state survey agency, that this information can help you, again, focus the complaint investigation in a meaningful way for the investigators as well.
absolutely. And again, to me, that's almost the choice. It's an incredibly important choice, and it's incredibly important to document, incidences that occur to your state survey agency. But I think for a lot of people, that's the choice that is the most intimidating to them. They're a little bit like, well, I don't know how to do that, and I don't know who those people are, and it sounds like a scary entity in the sky almost.
Yeah,
And it's one place where I really feel like having a resource like this and having your thoughts organized, knowing you're not just writing an email off to them where you're not sure what to say. You're telling them about an incident that occurred in a very organized manner, and you're giving them the information that you need. So, I think a lot of times when I talk to families and say, you can file a complaint with your state survey agency, I hope they do it. I really encourage them to do it, but I feel more empowered, as an advocate who's talking to families to say,
mhm.
not only, you should file a complaint, but here is exactly what you should be telling them and what they need to know. So I think this is really helpful in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hope folks will recognize that this is a tool for them to, again, help get whatever resolution possible to address an incident or a problem that has occurred, is occurring in a long-term care facility. I know that this is also something that if there's concern about abuse and you need to
Yeah,
report a situation or an allegation of abuse, that it can also be used in that case, if you need to contact law enforcement. I mean, if you have concerns about abuse, you should be contacting law enforcement as well as the
absolutely.
facility and the survey agency. Um, it again can help capture the incident and what happened um, in that
Yeah, and
situation.
I
Mhm.
appreciate that you just called it a tool because I feel like, part of how I've been describing it, I don't want to make people think in any way that this is the be all and end all of, we try to be pretty comprehensive in the information that we include in this. But you can certainly, we're not, this is one tool you have to use. You can still write that email. You can still,
Right.
tell people other things you think might not be captured by this. This is not supposed to be completely comprehensive. But I do think it's a really useful way to capture the most important things about an incident that people are going to want or need to hear. So it's sort of like one more thing, as you said, a tool to sort of put, in your toolbox
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah.
to use when something happens, and hopefully nothing will happen.
Right.
Again, this is, no one moves into a nursing home anticipating that, they're going to be filling in forms or reaching out to the state survey agency because of incidences that occur. But things do happen sometimes, and it is really important when those things happen to be prepared, and to know what to ask and what to be thinking about, as you navigate that process. So that's how I think this can be really helpful to people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said at the beginning, we developed this form and this tool in collaboration with the National Center on Elder Abuse, and
Hmm.
it's available on our website at theconsumervoice.org. And it's something that you can download. There's a downloadable version that you can use and fill
Hmm.
out yourself in writing. And then there's also an online version with a fillable PDF that you can type into. And again, these are things that you will take with you and then share with whoever the investigator is or whoever you're filing a complaint with. And you should take it and use it in that respect. So,
Yeah. We're
mhm.
really excited about it. So Lori, thanks so much for having this conversation today. This is great, and
Yeah,
hopefully it's helpful to people.
thank you, Jocelyn. And we'll look forward to talking with folks again at some other point. So, thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us on Pursuing Quality Long-Term Care. This podcast is a program of the National Consumer Voice for Quality Long-Term Care. Consumer Voice is a nonprofit organization and depends on our members and donors for support. To contribute to this podcast and our work, make a donation at theconsumervoice.org/donate. Every dollar helps. And make sure to visit our website, theconsumervoice.org/pursuingquality, where you can subscribe to the podcast, follow us on social media, and find more information and resources. If you enjoy the podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next episode.